welcome to another episode of Now About That with James and Sarah. I'm James.
I'm Sarah.
And on this, we're going to start that over. Wow.
I forgot who I was for a minute.
Hello. Hello and welcome to another episode of Now About That with James and Sarah. I'm James.
I'm Sarah.
Oh my God. Breaking down.
Okay, I'm Sarah, and that's James, and we're having a time. And by we, I mean me.
Take it back to one.
Believe it or not, I'm actually medicated now. So, there's no reason for me to be acting this way.
All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Now About That with James and Sarah. I'm James.
And I'm Sarah.
And on this week's episode, we have two topics that we're going to talk about. So it could be a lengthy one. And I am planning on leaving that entire first portion of it in there.
As you should. As you should.
All right. So one thing I want to talk about, one thing I want to do before we jump into the topics is just kind of catch up and see how things are going. I have something funny that happened this week that I want to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I don't have anything funny, but go for it. Let's hear it.
So typically I don't go into the facility on Fridays, but every 2 weeks now I'm going to have to, because we're doing a program that is, the classes for the program are every 2 weeks, and I'm hosting some of them, but then I'm also just helping. So yesterday we were in there, and the two managers, Scott and Joe, sit behind me, and they're used to being there on Fridays by themselves. And then now every 2 weeks, Karen and I will be coming in, and Scott is he's so frustrated right now. And sometimes it's kind of hilarious to hear him just freak out about things. So yesterday he was super frustrated about something he had requested another team to do. And he was just like, I'm just going to do it myself. Do we have any tools around here? And I just said, without even thinking, yeah, there are a few that work here. And then everyone started laughing. And then Joe kind of was like, that was really quick, James. It seemed like you just had something it was instinct. I was like, well, I mean, I'm not wrong. There are quite a few tools that work around here.
You know, where was the falsehood?
Yeah, so
no falsehoods were detected.
There was some levity in the day yesterday. It was funny.
That's good. I'm glad that there was levity.
Well, with that, you want to jump into the topics? So we have two topics we're going to talk about today. So it could be a long one depending on how the conversation goes with the two of us. The first one is a YouTuber named MrBeast. And I didn't really know too much about him, and I don't watch his videos, so I don't know much about his videos other than the information that I've kind of seen, and then the information I looked up online.
I know literally nothing about MrBeast. I've heard some things here and there.
Yeah.
I always feel like I hear a mixed bag with him, though.
Yeah. So I hear, I get that. And just based on some of the information I've read, I can kind of understand it. So the first part of it, I'll talk a little bit about who MrBeast is and the background. And then we want to talk kind of based on some of our previous conversations we've had about some of the quote unquote philanthropy that he does. I pulled some information on a few of the quote unquote philanthropic things that he's done. And then at the end of that, I do want to do a quick discussion about an AI algorithm video that I watched from Andrew Reardon from How to Cook That. It's talking about something that I'm sure you'll be interested in. So we'll get into that as well. But the second topic is Sarah's topic that she brought up from last week's podcast, where we're looking at a podcast that was released on March 1st in 2023 from Axios. I think it's Axios, actually.
I think it's Axios.
And it's all around illegal child labor law and an increase in American companies using illegal child labor. So we'll jump into that as well. I took some notes on that. But with the first topic, so MrBeast, his actual name is James Stephen Donaldson, born in Greenville, North Carolina, and began posting videos on YouTube in early 2012 at the age of 13, which I think is a little too young to be posting videos on YouTube.
Personally, he was born 1999.
1988.
Oh, no. If he was 13 in 2012.
Early 2012.
But if he was 13 in 2012, that means he was born 1999.
Oh, that says 1988 on his. So he might not have been 13.
He would have been 23 because he'd be the same age as us if he
was
born in 2012.
That's true.
Because I got married in 2011 at 22.
All right. Well, then maybe. Okay. I may have read it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was said 1988 I'll take a look and make sure. So one of the things that he has his raised to fame is he does this thing where he does videos where he will kind of release the video and say, like, be donating money to people in need, or like he'll be doing a massive giveaway that's like worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to one of the winners of the video. So it's kind of weird. And my take on that is it really about giving stuff away and giving money away, or is it the clout and the views that are surrounding the promise of giving money away? Because some of them are, I'll give it away to like 5 people that are watching the video, and it's like $20,000 that he gives away, something like that. What do you think?
So my understanding is, and again, I'm gonna preface this by saying I didn't look anything up. I did not. Like, James did the research on his end, and I'm just going with vibes. So I've always felt this way, though. If you have to tell somebody that you did a good thing, you didn't do a good thing.
Yeah. And I think those videos are less about giving money to people in need. Some of them are. I mean, the posting a video about you doing it is kind of like what you're saying. It's like, if you're talking about it, then it's not really a good deed, even though it is doing something, because you're making money off of giving money away.
Exactly.
So it's like
you're profiting off of your quote unquote charitable actions.
Yeah.
And like, I hate that I'm about to do this. I hate that I'm bringing this up, but there are so many people out there who claim to be Christians and claim to follow God's word and all this other stuff. But the Bible literally says it is better for you to pray in your closet just between you and God than to stand out and pray publicly like the hypocrite, like the Pharisees. You know, like, that's how it feels to me. Is like, you're standing out here and being like, oh my God, look at what a great person I am because I'm doing this, and this. And the reality is you're just doing it to make yourself look good. If it was truly about helping people, you wouldn't need to be filming it.
Yeah. I will say that it does say in a couple of interviews that he's done that he does have a pretty big amount of wealth. I think something I read was like he's worth like $40 million or something like that. But one of the things that he does say is that the revenue that he gets from a lot of his channels, and one of them specifically that we'll talk about later, goes directly to charities. So he donates the money that comes from the revenue. So the AdSense, the partnership with companies and stuff, that money gets given away to charities and it gets donated to charities. But there are some, like, he has, I think the way that I read it, he has 3 different channels. So there's the MrBeast channel, which is the original one. And then he has a reaction channel, and he also has a gaming channel. And a lot of the money that comes from the 2 other channels kind of fund the $1 million per episode or video that he released so that he can make those big videos. And part of that, like, big production of video is giving away money to people, giving away like cars and stuff. I think I've seen he gave away like a Tesla or something like that when it was like the Tesla Model X, the big $100,000 Tesla. So he's done that a couple times, I want to say. But that's kind of the channel portion of it, and like that part of it. The other thing he has a few businesses that he opened. So in 2022 he opened it's called MrBeast Burger. It's only in, I think, somewhere LA area. So you're only in the LA area that you can go and get it. But in 2022, so he opened it, I think, in 2020. But in 2022 he expressed interest in closing down due to quality issues, because he signed an agreement with a company and they're not living up to the standard that he wants them to. So he's talking about closing it down and cutting ties with the company. The other thing that he did in 2020, there was an app called Finger on the App, where it was a multiplayer mobile game where it was like a one-time game. There was like buzz around it and people downloaded it. You can only download it for at a certain time, and you had to hold your finger on the phone the longest, and the last person to hold your finger finger on your phone would win $25,000. And it ended up being, he felt bad. And like after a while, he said, okay, I think it was like 10 people left. It was like, everyone that leaves now, I'll give you $10,000. So it was like everyone that kind of, as they kind of get down to the top 4 or 5, he was like, anyone that leaves now, I'll give you $10,000 each. And then for the last 4, he gave each of them $20,000. And then like the main person got 25,000. So that was one of the other things that he did. And then one of the most recent companies that I do know of, just because I've seen the chocolate bars around, is the Feastables company.
Yeah, I've also seen the chocolate bars.
So when it was originally launched in 2022, included in the release was a contest or a sweepstakes where he gave away over $1 million in prizes. And like the main prize was a contest to compete for a chocolate factory in a video that was released in 2022. So I think it was like 10 people were included in the sweepstakes or the contest. That was kind of, I read an article and I included the articles around it I'll include them in the description of the episode, but it said there were 10 people and the person that actually won, he was given an option to take the deed of the factory or a cash prize of $500,000. And he ended up taking a cash prize of $500,000.
Fair.
Which makes sense.
Because I mean, there's no point in having, here's the thing about like giving away like the deed to a business, for example. Just because you own the company, like the deed, it costs money to start up a company. It costs money to run that kind of company.
Right. I would be interested to see like the specifics around the requirements of it. And it's like, if I get the deed, can I then just sell it and make a profit, like sell it for whatever? And I mean, if it's like, it has the notability and notoriety of being connected to, and there's a chocolate factory on the actual premises. So it's like, you could sell the deed to someone for $1 million or a couple $1 million. And like, that would be your winning. So it's like, I'm sure there was probably something baked into the contract where it was like, you can't sell it because it's for a certain amount of years because it's where the manufacturing of the chocolate is done or something like that.
Right.
So I don't know those specifics. But then the last kind of thing we'll talk about before we get into the philanthropy portion of the conversation is some of the controversial information that has been kind of brought into light in the last couple of years. So when he was a teenager, and I did look it up, it was 1998 he was born. So you're right. I read it wrong as 1988. But some of the controversial information is in some of his older videos when he was a teenager, he would use homophobic slurs in his video as like the punchline of a joke where he was reading through Twitter and stuff like that and referring to people as a fag and gay, saying things were gay. And his press team released a response in 2021 that said the YouTuber had grown up and matured into someone that doesn't speak like that anymore. So I mean, that's the only controversy I could have seen, or I did see in the little bit of research that I did over the last couple of days. And then the other thing is he used to be a member of the evangelical Christian religion until 2022, when he released that he now identifies as agnostic. And his main disagreement was the Christian opposition to homosexuality, and has since disavowed the anti-LGBT rhetoric. So those are the two things. And then the last thing that he highlights is that he avoids alienating his audience and considers himself as apolitical, because he feels like if he were to come out and state a specific political affiliation, that may interfere with like the charitable goals that he has, because maybe people don't want to watch it because he's being too political, or they feel like he's not being political enough and he is on the wrong side, basically. So that was kind of the background, and then like about his channel. And then there are just three of the three philanthropic endeavors that he's done that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll have a chat about whether each one of them, I know the answer to, I think most of them from you is going to be, that's not philanthropy. And I kind of agree, because it's not. I think we get back into using that term philanthropy in the wrong context in this situation.
Let me just say that I was re-listening to our philanthropy episode where we talked about philanthropy, and the main difference that we stated between charitable work and philanthropy is that philanthropy seeks to address the root cause of the issue.
Yeah.
Whereas charity is just giving your money, giving your time.
Yeah.
Like, you're not actually trying to change anything. You're just trying to throw money at the problem.
So I mean, okay, moving on. So the first one is called Team Trees, and it was launched in 2019 in October, and it's a fundraising challenge that was on a YouTube channel where he wanted to raise money, and every donation goes to the Arbor Day Foundation, who pledges to plant one tree for every dollar donated. And the original goal was $20,000 or $20 million, which they apparently raised by January 1st of 2020. So less than 6 months later, they had already reached that goal. And then as of 2023, the event helped plant over 24.4 million trees. So it sounds like they've reached that $24.4 million goal.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I mean, to me, that's more charity than anything. And you also have to look at because it did YouTube flag that as a charity request or charitable launch or whatever it's called, and remove the monetization from that episode or that video, or is it monetized?
Right.
Because if it's monetized, then it's like, well, now it goes back to that thing where we talked about where you're making money off of launching this endeavor that's meant to give money and to kind of look at planting trees, but you're still making money off of it. So it's not really philanthropy. It is mainly charity, because you're just giving that money that gets donated away, or you're having people donate money. So to me, that's not really
making money off of your charitable donations, which is gross.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that's not really, it's kind of weird, and it kind of goes into that conversation of, does it really make sense to I know it makes sense to advertise, because the more people that you get involved, the more money you can make. But unless you turn off your monetization of that video, then it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense.
Right. I agree. I don't. On the one hand, I can see how it would be considered philanthropic because, in the long term, planting those trees is addressing some of the issues that we have with deforestation, so on and so forth. That is addressing that. But I agree, though, if you're still making money off of trying to, it just makes it seem like a ploy. Like, oh, look at me. Look at what a great person I am. Look at how much money I raised for XYZ. Oh yeah, please don't look at the fact that I'm making money off of this as well. Okay, wait, let me backtrack just a little bit. I feel personally, my personal opinion, James hates it when I give my personal opinions. I think that, yes, he was a teenager when he was saying all that stuff. How long ago was it that he quit saying all that stuff? And then also, what has he done to... Has he come forward and been like, hey, I was a stupid kid, but I learned better? Because I know that people can learn. I know people can learn and grow and change. I have learned and grown and changed. Constant research, constant listening to other people and learning, and that kind of thing. And I'm absolutely aware that is a plausible thing. But are those videos still up? Are those videos still up? Has there been an actual, he came forward and apologized, or was it just his company?
I mean, the only thing that I saw was that his team released a statement.
Yeah.
But it does kind of, to me, his response to the leaving the evangelical church because of their opposition to homosexuality. And in the interview, it said he was his main thing was, it felt like it was being beat into his head and forced down his throat every day, anytime they talked about it. And it's not something he agreed with. So it's on one hand, you're saying that, but then on the other hand, if you look back at your old videos, I mean, yeah, you were immature, but I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things that both of us have done in the past that we understand was wrong.
For sure.
Now we understand that it's wrong, but it's how long do you hold that person accountable for something that they did when they were a teenager, when they were really young.
Right. And I think that goes back to what I was saying of when did he stop using those things,
Yeah.
using those words? Are those videos still up? Like, does he still make any money off of those videos?
Yeah, and there was
does he still profit off of his bigotry back then? But then the other thing too is that I have a real problem with especially cishet white dudes being all like, I consider myself apolitical. Yeah, of course you do, because none of the issues affect you. It's easy to be neutral in something when the system is built for you.
Yeah.
However, when somebody tells me that they're apolitical, to me, you're telling me that you're super privileged and you like being privileged and you don't care to change that. Like, it must be nice. It must be really nice to not be in a minority group that is constantly being affected by politics. Like, I'm an AFAB person. All right. I was assigned female at birth. I don't identify as female, but I was assigned female at birth. And one of the biggest aspects of my life is my body. I have no control over my body. The only reason I was able to get my hysterectomy was because I had cancer. But I have had so many health issues related to my uterus and my ovaries for years, like bleeding episodes that would last for months on end. And nobody cared because, you're a girl. That's just how it works. That's just how periods work. No, it's not how periods work.
Yeah.
Then you also have the other instance of like, I'm on the trans spectrum and I'm constantly being told I don't deserve rights as a human being because, but I'm damned if I do either way, because regardless of if I identified with my assigned sex at birth, I still have all these politicians, these cishet white dudes telling me what I can and cannot do with my body. So like, it must be really nice to be apolitical and just sit back and watch people dying literally because the government doesn't give two fucks about them, or watching Black people and brown people being systemically murdered by the police. Like, it must be really nice to just be able to sit back and be like, oh, that doesn't affect me.
I think the only thing I can kind of say to that is he says he's apolitical, but it does sound like sometimes, even in the interview that he gave, he is stating some specific views that are more one side of the political spectrum than the other. So it sounds like he's saying he's being apolitical, but it's more like he doesn't want his videos to get more politicized or more political. Because there was the comment about becoming agnostic because he felt like the Christian religion is homophobic and they promote the opposition to homosexuality. But then there's also an instance where in 2023, one of his friends and employee, Chris Tyson, came out as transgender and started taking feminizing hormone replacement therapy, and they were getting some backlash online, and he did release a statement and commented that isn't my nightmare, he's my friend, which used the wrong terminology there anyways. So there was a statement basically that he said where it's all the homophobia or the transphobia is starting to piss me off. So it's saying that he's not political, but then there are some areas where he gets he says political things that are more one way politically is a little different.
One of my let me say this and I'll stop ranting. To quote Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And I feel that anyone who says that they are apolitical, regardless of whether or not they are, coming in being like, oh, well, this transphobia stuff's really starting to piss me off, but it's only starting to piss you off because it's your friend.
Yeah.
You're on the side of the oppressor. That's like, if you're unwilling to stand up and say, no, this is wrong and all of this is wrong, then you've chosen the side of the oppressor, and that's how I see it. Yeah.
So back to his philanthropy. So that was one of them, the team trees. And then there's also something he called, which I don't understand this, Beast Philanthropy. It's a YouTube channel and is in support of a charity and food bank. And 100% of the advertising revenue, brand deals, and merch sales are donated to charity. And then some of the initiatives that they've done with this charity include giving away 10,000 turkeys in Greenville, North Carolina, where he's from, donating 20,000 shoes to children in Africa, and then building, I'm assuming they don't like go and build, but they give money to organizations that build wells in African villages with limited access to clean water. And then the last thing for this charity that is on the research that I did included gifting around $300,000 worth of technology to various schools. And then one example included in the article was East Carolina University. So that, to me, it's more like it's a little closer to philanthropy than just charity, because they're working with organizations that build wells. They're trying to address the lack of technology with the schools in the area. So it's a little closer to philanthropy.
Yes, because it's trying to address the root cause and not just what happens.
And then the last one we have before we jump into the video that I was talking about is Team Seas, which is kind of the same as the first one, where they partnered with the Ocean Conservancy and the Ocean Cleanup Initiative to fund the removal of over 30 million pounds of plastic and other waste from oceans, rivers, and beaches. And then as of May 2023, the initiative has reached half of the goal and removed 15.1 million pounds of waste in 63 different countries. And then when it closed, they raised $33 million. So, I mean, this one's kind of on the fence. And it's like with Team Seas and Team Trees, it's like I'm kind of on the fence because you are, in a way, working with like a foundation and initiatives that are addressing and like removing the trash and stuff like that. But it's like, are those initiatives also working with Congress to pass more legislation that addresses why these things are making it into rivers, waterways, and oceans? Like, is that something that these organizations are doing as well? Same thing with the trees. Like, is the Arbor Day Foundation, I've heard of them before and I think I've donated to them before, but it's like, are they also working with Congress to like pass legislation around if you cut down a tree for whatever purpose, maybe you're putting up housing or something like that, you then have to plant a tree somewhere else where it'll like make up for the amount of trees that you've removed to do your construction, because you're also like planting more trees in an area close to where you removed them. So that's something that's kind of like it borderlines on, okay, you're just donating money with these foundations, but you're teaming up with them, which is great. But what are those foundations actually doing? Is it just the removal, which is good, but it is also trying to address why there's stuff in the oceans, rivers, and beaches?
Right. Like, I mean, you have to not just do the cleanup, but also address what's causing the issue that we have to clean up, which the biggest issue is corporations. Corporations are single-handedly the biggest cause of pollution in the world, especially unchecked corporations like in foreign countries. There's a lot of foreign countries that don't have as strict policies, but the United States also allows a lot, to the point that, you know, it's just everything. The world is on fire. That's what's happening right now.
I will say some corporations, and it's like corporations a lot of them are doing better, but it also has to do with like they're only looking at what they do at their own site, but they're not looking at like what the company that they hired to get rid of their waste is doing with it. So it's kind of like plausible deniability, where they're saying, well, we hire this company, they say they do this, but if they don't, then it's not our fault, it's theirs. So it's like, are you hiring a company and then holding that company accountable when they're not meeting and doing what they said they would do in their contract? And then you're kind of basically giving it the approval because you continue with that contract year after year. Right. I do work really closely at my work with it's called Zero Waste Program, where you basically want to either counteract the amount of waste that you're putting into landfills by removing all like single-use plastics, like anything that's single use, and moving it to compost or recyclable. but then also like paying attention to the companies that are coming and retrieving that recyclables and retrieving those compostables and making sure that they do actually get composted and recycled and not just put into the landfill. So there are some companies that are working on that, and a lot of them, because of the like green initiative that came out a few years ago, it's a lot of companies are being promoted and asked to do that, and they also get it's kind of a little selfishly because they also get a little bit of an incentive for it as well.
Correct.
So if
they just never trust any corporation ever.
If they get that like true zero waste certification, then they get a governmental incentive that says, good, you did this, so we'll give you some extra money.
Because the corporations need more money. Don't you know? So
the last thing on this, like around YouTube, basically topic that I wanted to talk about was, so there's two things. The last thing about MrBeast I saw was there was a video that was released recently where he was doing an interview, and as part of the interview he said he would give away $5,000 to anyone that went to the website. So there was a website that flashed on the screen, and then they used the promo code that was included on the screen during the interview. So that was just something that came up, which was kind of like, that's a little weird because it's like you're opening it to anyone, so you have no control or understanding of where that money's going.
Right. Like, what are you funding?
Yeah. And then the last thing for kind of more YouTube centric that I wanted to talk about is a video that Anne Reardon released. And I am going to include the link of the video in the description of this week's podcast, so if you don't know who Anne Reardon is, she's on a channel called How to Cook That, where she talks about, I think originally she was like showing people how to like bake things, or how to like do a hack for something that they would typically go to like Chick-fil-A or something like that and get.
Yeah, I remember watching her channel in those earlier days.
But more recently she's been kind of debunking some of like the 5-minute craft videos, some of the TikTok videos that they're posting, and it's like some of the things that are dangerous and have been shown to cause injury to the people that watch them and then go and try them.
Right.
But the latest video that she just posted as of the time of recording, which is April 6th, it was about the AI algorithm in YouTube. And first she kind of wanted to see if shorts were killing like long form content, because people are more likely to watch shorts. And she showed when she searched for something, all of the things that were coming up in the all tab was like, it was all ads, but then it would also go to shorts, and then it would go to more ads, and then shorts. And like there weren't any videos for the first like few scrolls that she had until she got down to the last scroll. When she reached out to YouTube, they said that they couldn't get her the information she was asking for about long form content. But they gave her like stuff about how many views the most viewed videos had, like the most viewed shorts had. And then the other thing in like the last portion of her video was talking about whether the algorithm is biased towards pushing content created by males more than female. And she included in the video, like part of her research that she did was to see the top viewed channels and see how many of the top viewed channels were female creators. And of the top 10, only one of them was a female creator. And because it was a gaming channel, she wasn't even pictured or shown in the video at all. So none of the videos included her. And then she does also talk a little bit about the controversy around kids channels and how some of the content that these channels release. In her research that she didn't include any channels that were marked as for kids specifically, because their comments and stuff are turned off. So if you don't know, for YouTube, if you upload videos and you mark it as for kids, the comments automatically get turned off, and you can't monetize it because you can't target ads towards children. It's illegal to target ads towards children on YouTube. But some of the content that she looked at, she was like, well, children are only in this video, and the content that it's being produced seems like it's more geared towards children. So I don't know why it's not marked as for children. And then like some of the content was like what is it? What is that game called? Minecraft? Yeah, Minecraft. And it was like the commentary around it seemed very like child centric. So she's like, a lot of this, it's kind of getting back to it doesn't say that it's for children, but you can tell by watching the content that it is specific, like it's made geared towards children.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just an interesting video, and I'm going to include the link to that video in the description of this week's podcast.
Yeah.
Thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
The YouTube algorithm is split.
Yeah, and I think she did also
better. Like, to be honest, I think it's gotten worse as time has gone on.
Yeah. She did also say that like an algorithm, and I've looked into AI and did some research on it for one of my master's papers, and the AI will only do what you feed it. So if there's a bias included in the content that you're giving to the AI program, not only does it take that information, it like increases that bias and like magnifies it. Mm-hmm. So it can look like she did an example where she asked AI to generate pictures of doctors, and only one of the 9 doctors was a female. But then in the same content that was done in the US, if you asked it to like do a United States doctor, it was like 3 of the 10 were female doctors. So it really depends on kind of like where you're located, and then what is fed into that AI algorithm that will adapt and change. And like she said, the AI, if there's a bias that's baked into the algorithm, the only thing AI does is magnify it and make it worse.
Yep.
So until there's like legislation or
don't like about AI, like there's a lot of things I don't like about AI, but like that's one of them, is that it's a lot of times it's being used by people to increase their biases.
I wouldn't say that. I would say it's probably accidentally, or a lot of the times they don't even notice that they're uploading a bias into it, but then they do. It's like what approach are they taking to fix the bias once it's been like integrated into the AI program and magnified?
Maybe I'm just really jaded.
I mean, I would agree with that statement.
But I don't believe that. I don't. Yeah. The people who do these things, they know what they're doing when they're when they're feeding into these things. And you know, which is why we get a lot of people who seem to think that there are no issues because, well, I can't find any information on it. Well, you can't find any information on it because the algorithm has been created to not let you find any information on it.
It kind of goes to the thing that just recently happened with Instagram. Did you see that, where they released an update, and part of the update was it automatically turned off political information? So it changed your feed to like there's a switch that you can turn off or turn on if you want to view political content, or you don't want to view political content. And it automatically came with a recent update to Instagram where it was turned on to filter out political content. So it's interesting. So if you're looking through your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever recently, and you noticed you're not seeing very much political stuff, if you're okay with it, that's fine. But it automatically turned it off whenever they did a recent update.
In a way that's nice, because it means like none of the bad information is going to be showing up. But then at the same time, you're preventing people from seeing the quote unquote good information. Not that there's any right now, because the political sphere is fucked beyond fucked. So,
but it also kind of depends on what they're flagging as political, because it could have been like a news release that had something about like something crazy that happened, but it was marked as political by someone. So you don't see it because someone marked it as political content when it actually wasn't political content. You're just politicizing an issue or an event that happened. Mm-hmm. So it's on the kind of verge of, you don't want to see these political things, but that's why there's the option to, hide videos from people, or completely block certain channels or certain profiles where you don't see their content anyways. Like that's always my go-to. It's like, if I don't want to see it, I'll block it, or I will say, do not show me this again. I am going to say TikTok is being pretty bad about it, because I have so many times said I don't want to see content from this creator, and it's still like in my feed, there's multiple videos from that person still.
Right.
So it's like, you're not using that. If you're giving me the option to do it, but then you're still feeding me content from that creator, why is it an option? Because you're obviously not using it and listening to me. One thing I will say before we move on to the next topic, which is I will let Sarah take away, because this is mainly her topic, is If you would like to get involved in this conversation, feel free to comment on the video if you watch it on YouTube. Leave us a message. You can send us an email or get in touch with us on Instagram or social media. Talk to us about it on there. If you want to talk about Mr. Beast or AI algorithms, we'll talk about it. And if this is something you enjoyed, we'll talk about it more.
Exactly.
All right. So the next topic, I do want to pause real quick because I do need to run to the restroom. We'll be right back.
Oh, I guess.
And go.
Okay. So here in the last couple of weeks, my mom had talked to me about something that she had read about Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola utilizing child labor to harvest their sugar for their products. And she was just like, I just thought you would want to know because I am, in case anybody missed this, I'm an extremely political person. And so I have a tendency to I want to research things, I want to understand, and I want to combat the shitty things that I see in the world around me. So my brother did some of the extra research for me as far as that went, and discovered that yes, it is a thing that numerous companies have been doing, but that some of the other more horrific aspects that my mother had been telling me were not necessarily from the company itself and more a regional issue. Still terrible. Anyway, so I gave up all Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola products, which, was rough because I was a big Coca-Cola fan.
Meanwhile, I started this episode by cracking open a new Coke.
I know. I thought that was really funny and I was not going to say anything about it. But anyway, so in my quest, I guess, to look further into companies that have and have not been utilizing child labor, I came across this Axios article for podcast. I did not listen to the podcast. I read the transcript and was devastated to learn that one of the companies that was found to be illegally employing children was Ben & Jerry's. And I found that really upsetting because Ben & Jerry's in particular is a very politically motivated company, and they do a lot of important activism work, including donating a lot of the sales of their ice creams to different organizations, including the Black Lives Matter movement, so on and so forth. They've been big spokespeople for these things. And so finding out that some of their facilities across the United States have been employing children was extremely upsetting. So the illegal use of child labor in the U.S. Is on the rise, according to the Department of Labor.
I do have a quick question. So is it in the United States or is it the company that they hire to harvest the sugar cane or the
Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, it's the company that they work with utilizes child labor.
Yeah, which kind of goes back to the conversation we were just having is corporates, if you don't hold the people that you hire to do a job accountable, then you're still not doing right.
Yeah. So one of the things, since I'll just read you what this says here, is that since 2018, there's been a 69% increase in children being employed illegally by companies. And the primary children who are experiencing this are migrant children because they often slip through the cracks. And many of them come from poverty, are completely impoverished. And unfortunately, sometimes they're the only able-bodied people able to work and provide for their families, both here in the United States and abroad. Hyundai, for example, was one of the people listed that they said that they were divesting their stake in an Alabama metal stamping plant that discovered that they were employing children as young as 12. That's an extremely dangerous job, metal stamping, and there's a reason that we put laws into effect to protect children from child labor. And so it's really disgusting, in my opinion, that this is a thing that is on the rise now of these children being put in this situation in the first place.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk about it, at the very beginning of the podcast episode, or if you read the transcript that's there too, they included information about what legal use of child labor looks like. And the information they included, and I think is the federal law, is that children can start working at the age of 14, but there are specific parameters around the number of hours they're allowed to work, the types of jobs that they're allowed to work, and then if they're in school or if they're out of school, how many hours can they work. But typically, most of the time, no one under the age of 16 is allowed to work more than like 3 hours a day or 3 hours during a school day while they're in school. And then I am going to include some links in the description of this podcast that talks about the requirements around child labor laws. And we'll like the one that you just sent, the UNICEF protection child labor. So we'll include those links in the podcast if you'd like a little bit more information.
So I pulled up an article about child labor from UNICEF, which is nearly 1 in 10 children are subjected to child labor worldwide, with some forced into hazardous work through trafficking. Roughly 160 million children were subjected to child labor at the beginning of 2020, with 9 million additional children at risk due to the impact of COVID-19. This accounts for nearly 1 in 10 children worldwide. Almost half of them are in hazardous work that directly endangers their health and development. Most often, child labor occurs when families face financial challenges or uncertainty, whether due to poverty, sudden illness of a caregiver, or job loss of a primary wage earner. And I like it's weird to what
I'm only laughing because of the amount of times you say I notice it so much now because I edit these and I'm like, she says so much.
I'm so sorry.
It's like I have to go in and cut out every I hear. Some of them do get passed because I'm like I can't collect all of them, but it's
you can't cut all of them because it's a thing that I do.
And then sometimes and we're getting completely off topic, but it was funny because I was sitting here listening and it was just like, and then and I was like, Jesus Christ. But then it's like, sometimes I can't cut it because if I do, I'm cutting off part of another word that you're trying to say as well.
I'm
sorry. This is a very important topic. I don't know why I just cut in like that, but I just sat here listening and I was like, oh gosh, she's saying like every other word.
I know. And I reckon I know when I'm doing it too, because like I try not to, but then if I can't think of something, that's immediately what my brain, I'm just like, anyway. So the federal child labor provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 were enacted to ensure that when young people work, the work is safe and does not jeopardize their health, well-being, or educational opportunities. And these provisions also provide limited exemptions. But especially when we're looking at, and I did it again, now I'm going to be really noticing, is that I don't know if you've heard anything about like Quiet on the Set.
I haven't heard anything about. I mean, I've heard things about it, but I haven't looked into too much about it. But yeah,
it's a documentary about the child actors, specifically Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
However, I am sure that Disney will have its time to shine as well.
I think they're talking about doing another, like making it a program and having multiple episodes. So we might see some come from Disney child stars and stuff too.
Yeah, and there's one Disney child star that has already started doing, like, she has a podcast about it. I'm trying to
Christy Carlson Romano.
No, but Christy Carlson Romano is another one. I'm speaking specifically of Allison Stoner, who I don't know what anybody else would recognize her from. I saw her in Cheaper by the Dozen 2, as well as Mike's Super Short Show back in ye olden days. She's 30. She's born 1993 in Toledo. But she has a podcast where she talks about her experiences as a child star, as well as bringing other people on to talk about their experiences. And I also saw a video not that long ago from Cole Sprouse talking about his and his brother's experiences as children.
Oh, yeah.
In Hollywood, and Frankie Muniz talking about his experiences and all these different experiences. And it really solidified for me that it's not just the children who are being forced into mining or into metal stamping or what have you, but it's also children who are being forced into being performers for our amusement and entertainment. Fair Labor Standards Acts, unfortunately, do not protect child stars as much as other children. But obviously, you can see that it's not doing very much to protect migrant children at this time either.
Yeah.
It's something that I know not everybody is a huge fan of children like I am. However, I worked as a child. I started cleaning houses and babysitting for people when I was 10 years old. I've been working since I was 10. And a lot of the money that I made was taken from me by my stepfather to pay bills. Or when I did get to keep my money went towards school supplies or getting treats for me and my siblings. So it kind of hits really hard for me thinking about these kids who are not getting an opportunity not only for their education, but they're also not getting an opportunity to just be children and, enjoy their childhood.
Yeah. I think I don't have that because I didn't start working until I was 16, but I do realize like the thought process of, well, there's things that I need and I want money and my parents don't have the money for it. So maybe I should start working for it, or things that I need that my parents don't have the money for. So I will just start working for it. And it's terrible that any child has to do that. But included in this article, they also did talk a little bit about, you talked a little bit about it where it was migrant workers and where the Health and Human Services was lacking when it comes to tracking how many migrant kids are working. And that's part of the reason that the amount of people that are employing migrant children are working and their jobs, like they're working jobs because they're the only one in their family that can do it and they're the sole providers for their family. So a lot of them are not going to school and quitting and going to work so that they can make money for their family, which is wrong and should be something that should be looked at. And like part of the crackdown that they were talking about, they kept alluding to, and that was included in the Times article, is the Department of Labor is starting to include a $15,000 per kid fine. And they're also looking to Congress to have Congress take action to increase the standard and requirements around it. But then at the same time, you have some states that are enacting legislation to make it easier to employ children from 14 to 17. And those states include Arkansas, Iowa, New Jersey, New Hampshire. And their reasoning behind is to say that it's allowing the young adults to develop their skills in the workplace, which is very antiquated approach. There are ways that you can provide the same skills in a controlled, safe environment in school that are not like causing them to have to work next to a grill or a vat of hot grease, or like you were talking about, a metal stamping company. Like those things, there's even one of them in the article that I'm including where it talked about one state was trying to make it easier to employ children on construction sites. And it's like construction sites are very dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. Who needs a child? Who needs a child working on a construction site?
So the article that I'm looking at, or that I pulled up and reviewed, was from The Conversation, which is an academic journal. And let me see where they said states like Oklahoma are introducing bills that would allow 14 and 15-year-olds to work until 9 p.m., but also allow them to work more in areas like in construction where they would be met with more dangerous stuff.
I don't understand why we would think that this is a good idea.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And in the end, what you're doing is you're diminishing the child's ability to get the proper amount of sleep, the proper amount of rest, the proper amount of time, like, to be kids. They already have school.
Yeah.
It's one thing, okay, to be like, every now and then you babysit, like to make a little side money, or like you help out a relative and to make like a few extra bucks for like XYZ, or you do little chores to get an allowance. That's very different.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also very different than what I was doing as well, because I was regularly employed. It's just frustrating to me because we, in particular in the United States, we have a problem with the Republican Party saying that they are pro-life and they care about children's welfare, and they, it's wrong to let children go on, HRT or whatever, puberty blockers or whatever to live as their authentic selves. But it's totally okay for them to work on a construction site and be utilized as a body for capitalism.
Yeah.
where they could potentially die, or
Yeah.
severely injured. The fun thing about Republicans is they literally only care about children until they're born, and they only care about white children and straight children and heterosexual children.
Yeah, I did find it interesting that part of the conversation that they had in that podcast was that some of the factors about the increase in child labor is around the economy and the pressure to get people in the door, but raise wages. And the reason, like, they're looking more into some companies are looking more into employing children is because they can have them work at a lower rate, or employ migrant workers or migrant children is because they don't have to have them at that specific rate because there's no requirement for them. It's kind of like they're saying it's an excuse, and then part of it, one of the discussions moves to a topic. So there was an economist that found from the W.E. Upjohn Institute of Employment Research that said a lot of the situations where children were found to be on the payroll, the company will say something like, "We don't employ the kids. It was the other company that provided the kids to us, and they're the ones that are violating the law." So it's kind of like passing the buck on to the other company. But yeah, it's like you hired them.
You're still keeping them on.
Yeah, I think I don't know this situation. That was the only thing that was included in the article, and it could have been like they're not hiring them to come and work at like their factory or at their facility. It's the thing that we were talking about earlier, where it's a contractor, and that contractor is the one that's hiring the kids. They're not actually like we do when we have temporary employees. Mm-hmm. They hire them. They are the ones that are employed through that temporary service, but they're working at our facility. I don't think that, to me, that doesn't sound like that's the case in this instance, or it doesn't seem like it's the case, because at that point it's like, well, you have employment requirements that say the person is supposed to be a specific age, or they're supposed to meet the requirements to be able to work. Mm-hmm. But you're still like, if the agency that you're hiring to do that is not fulfilling those requirements, then why are you allowing them to provide that person to you? You give them the set of parameters that they're required to meet to actually employ someone in your facility. So you can't say that you don't notice it if they're providing someone that's like 14, 15, and you're having them work 40 hours a week when they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And I agree. I think it's disgusting to make children work. If a child, when I say child, a young adult wants to work, so 14, 15, 16, 17, if they want to work and it's like a small part-time job where they just make money to do things with their friends or something like that, and they want to work to, pay for something that they want to do, like they want to go on a trip, to instill that responsibility into a child to understand the meaning of money and how to budget for something. If you say, okay, you can do this, like go on this trip with your friends, but I want you to raise the money for it, so you have to get a part-time job. That sounds like something that is acceptable to me. But stuff like what we're talking about in this article, where there's companies that are employing children in dangerous working conditions or making them work too many hours so that they're not able to get enough sleep or do things that children should do, that's where it's like, that's obviously wrong. But aside from like a company cutting ties with, kind of like what you were saying, where Hyundai is severing ties with that company in Alabama, they found to have children employed. It's like, what other things can a company do to make sure that they're meeting those requirements? It's very strange. And if they don't, like, what is the government? And right now, Congress isn't doing anything. I read an article the other day that said this has been the least productive Congress in the history of Congress.
That's not shocking to me at all, because they're all too fucking old.
Oh, they're all too old, and they have a set specific political agenda, and because one of them controls by one vote now, they can shut down anything. It's like, that's not how this works.
It's not how the democracy is supposed to be run. None of this is how it's supposed to be. And I just find it devastating, to be honest. Like, it genuinely, everything that's going on in the world right now just genuinely fucking breaks my heart. And I just feel like every day what can I do? What can I do? There's not a whole lot I as a single individual am able to do, but I'm trying. So it's like, I don't support Starbucks anymore. I don't support McDonald's anymore. Because of their support of Israel's continued genocide in Gaza. And I was just like, well, I'll give a Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola too, but also I found out like weird Weird side little note, Coca-Cola owns Quaker Oats.
Yeah.
I did not know that until I was like looking it up.
So I mean, that's the thing. It's like there's these like main companies and they own like a bunch of all of the other companies. So it's like you look at one company and it's like, oh, okay, this company doesn't do it. But then it's like if you look at their subsidiary, the person that like controls them and owns like the rights to them, they do something that's kind of negative. So at what point is it like, okay, I get that this company, like the main company about it, does contribute to things that I don't agree with, but like how much does my impacting this one company make an impact? But then I also look at it as if I'm messing with this company and like say I stop going to Starbucks or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. I stop going to Starbucks or whatever, and they start losing money, which they have, but then like that gets into the conversation about, well, that's not only impacting the business, that's also impacting the people that are employed by that business, because now they're having to shut down. They're having to shut down sites. They're having to shut down some of the businesses or some of the areas that are currently employing people that rely on the money from that company, and they may not have another job to go to, or they may be living paycheck to paycheck, and you're now, because of something that you were kind of involved in, has led to them losing their job. It's like, well, now I prevented someone from having the money that they need to live. So it's difficult conversation, and I get it. We should hold companies and factories more accountable, but at what extent is it like this is taking it too far, because now I'm impacting thousands of other people's jobs because I'm removing revenue that they would have otherwise. I don't think that's why I get a little frustrated with the whole thing with I'm not going to support them, because it's like, at what point is it too much? And the more accountability is, how are they offsetting their support, or what are they doing to fix the unethical support of something?
Right. So for me, what I do is I give my money to more local businesses. I go to Dutch Bros for coffee now, like, or I make my own coffee at home. I buy from companies that I like. Obviously, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but there are certain businesses that them losing revenue, yes, unfortunately, some of the workers are going to end up suffering. They're already suffering though, because those companies also do not treat their people well either. Starbucks, for example, has been extremely in the news recently for union busting specifically, and refusing to pay their workers a living wage, and refusing to, talk to unions whatsoever, firing people who are involving themselves in the union, which is also illegal. It is illegal to fire somebody based on whether or not they are involved with a union, because you have a legal right to be a part of a union.
Yeah, it does go back to the conversation though. It's like, it's because the companies are allowed to, and there is like a loophole, or there's not a restriction around some things. Like what you're saying, the firing someone for seeing about getting involved in a union, there's probably a loophole that Congress needs to fix that they're not fixing because they're too busy doing other stuff that has nothing to do with anything people need. And that was just something I wanted to kind of bring up, because we talk about this all the time, where it's don't support the companies that are involved in Israel, which I just needed to bring it up and say that it's like, I understand and I get it. I always run into the issue where I don't see how what I do, and then it possibly causes someone to lose their job. Even no matter how bad their job is, it's still a job. They do have the opportunity to go somewhere else, but right now they're not, and they're working there because they're making the money. They may not have an option. And now we're taking away that job that was there for them.
In the same way that you don't support Chick-fil-A. It's the same thing.
I don't support Chick-fil-A. It's not just because of the LGBTQ issues. I mean, that's part of it. I just don't like their food.
But like, that's the thing though, is that, you and I don't eat Chick-fil-A because they actively donate to anti-LGBTQ plus organizations. I don't support Starbucks and McDonald's because their CEOs actively support genocide. And McDonald's in particular dropped in Happy Meals to the IDF soldiers who were brutally murdering babies and blowing up hospitals. So like, it's, for me, it's the same thing. I'm not supporting with my money. My money is not going to go to these companies.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying about, like, you know, the workers and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I have to live with me, and I don't want my money supporting something like that. I don't want my money going to Chick-fil-A. I don't want my money going to Starbucks. I don't want my money going to McDonald's. I genuinely do not want my money going to those people. So I won't.
Yeah. And
then I'll find other ways to help support those workers who get displaced, whether that's by donating my time and money to people who have lost their jobs, that I'm able to help support them, or whether that is finding alternative employment options for people, working with, you know, my local town committees, so on and so forth, to help people get jobs that they need elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, this turned into a very deep conversation.
So extremely so, yes.
Now, do you want to wrap it up with what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, let's do that. This weekend I'm going to go see the 85th anniversary of Gone with the Wind.
Oh.
Which I'm extremely aware of the problematic nature of it, and yes, I don't defend it. It's just a movie that I have a sentimental attachment to. So I'm doing that tomorrow. Originally, I was supposed to be watching the Bobercino this weekend because Nick and Horace were going to be in Houston, but unfortunately, Horace wasn't feeling too good, so they ended up having to cancel their trip. So today I'm gonna pay my Texas tag bill from having to go through the tolls, and then I'm going to chill out for a little bit, and then probably go and drive for Uber Eats tonight.
When do you find out? When do you find out about your TB test and stuff?
They said it can take a couple of days. I'm assuming I will probably hear something on Monday.
Yeah.
Because I did get the notification. I got an email notification from them saying that everything was in progress. So I'm just waiting for them to tell me what's going on, and hopefully I passed my drug test. And I mean, I have been abstaining.
Yeah.
Since I was told that I was hired. So I have not partaken in any smoking activities since the 17th of March.
Yeah, and I still struggle with that, because it's like, if it's legalized in your area, then why does it matter?
I know, and I told them as well. I was just like, hey, just as a heads up.
Oh, so I do know the reason behind it, because just because it's legalized in your area, if there's federal regulations, and marijuana is still federally a class 2 drug. Is that right? Class 2, class 3. It's still on par with heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still like, it's something that if they're federally regulated, like Boston Scientific, that's fine. Like Boston Scientific, we have to test for it. So like, even though it's at state level, it's allowed, because it's still federally illegal. It's not like, it's something that we are federally required to check for.
Yeah. So I did tell the people that are hiring me that yes, I have used the stuff that is illegal.
Yeah.
I buy from a store down the street.
Yeah.
Called Trippies. Like, not a sponsor, but I love Trippies. So I did tell them, I said, you know, look, I had cancer, and one of the ways that I've used to treat my chronic nausea since having cancer is I do smoke and use edibles, but I do use the stuff that is legally allowed in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
But at least they're aware. They know. And I did look into trying to maybe get I know I'm saying a lot right now. I was looking into seeing if I could get my medical marijuana card, but because my cancer is gone and it wasn't terminal to begin with, I didn't have terminal cancer.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I don't qualify for it. I could qualify if I got diagnosed officially with autism. Kind of bizarre to me, but okay. But yeah, I don't don't have the money for a diagnosis for that either. So
But my weekend, I don't really have anything planned. I'm going to edit the podcast and then the trailer that we did right before the podcast and get those uploaded. Then other than that, Ryan and I don't have anything planned for tomorrow. Tomorrow's Sunday, so we typically go and get lunch or something.
we're having such deep and mentally, emotionally destructive conversations that I completely forgot to ask you about Late Night with the Devil.
Oh yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I think I knew that was the way it was going to end when it started going crazy with like what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that was what was going to happen. But it was fun.
It was good. It was good. I want to see it again because I feel like there were parts that I was just so what the fuck.
I don't know if you saw it, but so it was like the very first break that they took. He was talking to his producer, and then he was first looking at himself in the mirror, and then he was talking to his producer, and then as they walked away, I grabbed Ryan and I was like, "Did you see that? There's a flash of the mirror where his wife, bald head, white gown, standing in the mirror." And Ryan's like, I didn't see it.
I didn't see that.
So
either.
if you do go watch it, it's like right after he looks at himself in the mirror and then he's talking to his producer, as they like walk away and it flashes at the mirror, you can see the white figure with the bald head standing in the mirror.
Terrifying. That movie, it takes a lot to like fuck me up with a horror movie.
Yeah.
But that movie fucked me up. I was like, am I possessed by the devil?
I wouldn't say it was. I mean, I didn't find it as crazy as you're kind of saying. I thought it was an interesting take, and it was a fun movie. I don't know that I was horrified by it by any means, but I'm also insane.
I mean, I'm also insane.
I'm very desensitized to horror movies.
Real life is more horrifying. Somebody posted on Twitter and was just like, how can you watch horror movies? Don't y'all get scared? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I get scared, but also real life, 100 times more terrifying.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to call it a podcast? I think this is going to be probably our longest episode ever.
Yes, we can call it a podcast.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Now About That with James and Sarah. If you like this episode, give us a like, a comment, and don't forget to follow or subscribe. If you'd like to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, this will help get the podcast out to more people and help us grow. Feel free to follow us on social media. Our handle everywhere is @NowAboutThatPod. So if we don't come up in the search, we are not on that platform. And if there's something specific you would like us to discuss on the podcast, feel free to email us at nowaboutthatpod@gmail.com. Visit our website, www.nowaboutthatproductions.com, or you can leave us a voicemail or send us a text message with any questions or topics you would like us to discuss. Our phone number is 765-557-4170. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you have a great week since this will be coming out on Monday. And Sarah, enjoy your weekend.
You too. I hope you find something fun to do.
Me too. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.